I was out on another gig recently where I was covering a function for my client who's also affiliated to the British Council. They're responsible for the project African Storybook. What it is, it's a collection of stories online in text, PDF format, and various other formats where famous African stories, the sorts of stories that you heard about growing up as a child, stories about the tortoise or stories about witches and wizards and things like that. They have all these stories curated online and translated into different languages, not just English. So they have a healthy collection of stories in Igbo and Yoruba, Swahili, and different languages, not just from Western or Eastern Africa, but from Southern Africa and some parts of the North as well. Now, the idea behind the project is to help facilitate the revival of African languages, because everybody knows that African languages are in decline. But that's not the focus of the video. The reason why I've made the video is working with them, I've found a new resource for sharing stories with my son, because he's gotten to that age of comprehension where we can talk about stuff, and through stories he can learn about things and improve his vocabulary. Well, anyway, so recently I've been in that mindset of using stories as a tool for our children, just like I'm sure the people who set up the website, that was the chief conception that they had in mind, using story as a means for children. But in discussing with my wife so far, I've learned that stories are not just useful for children, but also for adults as well. A lot of us are self-employed, and even if you're not self-employed, I'm sure every day you're faced with the pressures of trying to advance yourself financially and to advance your career. So we're in a very go in a very hurried world, and so that leads to a lot of us burning out quite quickly. So I've come to learn from my wife that stories or fiction are not just good for children, but for adults as well, because we can use them as a tool to step down, to refocus, and to reprioritize. And so with that in mind, I decided to check out some fiction, and I read The Day of the Triffids. I think that's by Tintam, I can't remember, but it's a science fiction writer, and science fiction and comics were things that I used to enjoy as a child, but I had stopped reading because I thought those sorts of things are for children only. And it was an interesting book. It's a post-apocalyptic story which, in my own opinion, deals with the great idea of what do you do when society falls apart. So, questions a lot the whole thing about moral conventions. How do we come up with our sense of morals and things like that? But bottom line is, after talking to my wife, sitting down and reading quite a bit of fiction, things that I used to enjoy as a child, was a very good experience, because it did calm my nerves on a number of things, and taking time out to read stories, taking that time out to read story was a very good way to set back, to let back and chill, and to let go of some steam. And so that's the reason why I'm putting up this video. For those of us who have kids, stories are not just for kids, but stories are for you as well. We can use the stories to help teach our children about the world. And for those of us who know quite a bit about the world already because we're adults, stories are a useful way for us to step down, to refocus, to relax, and put some joy and vitality back in our souls. So fiction and stories are not just for kids. Try and put some of the story back in your life. That's the reason why I made this video. Have a lovely day.